Hi everyone, welcome back to how to analyze your secondary sources in Nvivo. So you should have already set up your Nvivo project with your academic literature and your secondary sources. So in this video I'm going to show you a few techniques that you can use to analyze the data contained within these documents. Nvivo has a lot of ways of analyzing data. I'm just going to go through a process that is fairly simple and is a good starting point in terms of the research process. If you wanted to find out more about the other bells and whistles in Nvivo, I have put a link to other Nvivo tutorial videos on Waddle. So the first stage in analyzing the literature is what we call exploratory. We don't really know what we've found at this stage, and we don't really know what we're looking for either. So in this stage, it's just a matter of reading and putting in notes about what we think is important so we can come back to it later. So we open up a document. I'm just going to move these off to the side so I can see it more clearly. So this is Arnaud and Thompson, Consumer Culture Theory. So I need to read through this paper, and selecting words, I can select sentences that I think are important. So I can select this one, and and it talks about simplifying this concept. So I can right click and I select code, and I want to create what's called a new node. So I'm going to call this new node simplification. Oops, and I can't spell. Oh, how this is the weirdest. Okay, we'll try again. There we go. Simplification. Okay. And I continue on. And this one is talking about framing. So I can add another code called new code, and I'm going to call it framing. So I can do this for multiple documents. So if I go to Cerno and Wang, if I think this sentence here is also to do with simplification, I select it, and I can code to a recent node. It doesn't seem to want to show me. Of course it doesn't. So I then select simplification and I go OK. And down here, if I think this has to do with framing, I select framing and it goes there. And it goes, you can add codes to your heart's content to see what codes you've created. On the left hand side you can see nodes, so you select that and here are your nodes. You can create sub nodes, so if you select framing and then sub node, so I might have framing and a sub node of good, and I might have another subnode of bad. So in coding up your documents, say if you're dealing with a concept of attitude, you might want to have attitude as your main code, but then have positive and negative as subcodes. So what does this mean that we can do? Well, once you've coded everything up across documents, we can then go to the node of framing. I've I see I've got two sources with two references, and everything that I have coded at that node then gets listed here. So every time I think something has to do with framing, it doesn't matter which document it appears in, every mention or everything I've coded at framing then turns up in this section here, so I can review everything that has been said about this concept in one location. And from reading all of those references, I can then see whether there's something else going on, whether all of these things refer to the same thing, or whether they're actually referring to something different, and I might need to recode into a different location or under a different heading. So if you start by reading and developing up these codes and deciding on what are the main concepts, the next stage is to, because we're dealing with a lot of data, you can then run what is called a query to see whether these terms or words are repeated throughout all of your documents. So if you select query, and the query window comes up, and you can right click and say new query. So you can do different types of queries. You can do a text search, you can count the number of words, you can search your coding. There's all sorts of things that are much more advanced that we don't need to worry about at this stage. At this point, I'm just interested in a text search. So in the text search, I tell it what I want to do. What do I want to search for? I want to search for the term commitment. You can have and, or, and those kinds of search functions in there, but also realize that you can set the level of exactness, because English is not exactly an exact language. You can use stemmed words, so it can understand that it needs to look for commitments. Possibly if I put in just commit, it would then look for committing or committed at the same time. So how specific do you want the search to happen? Happens here. I'm going to leave it as an exact match. I can select which items I want it to search, so I can specify whether I just want it to search the academic literature or the secondary sources. Because this is a concept search, I'm looking for the concept of commitment, I'm going to leave it at just academic literature. I'm going to select academic literature and not secondary sources and say OK. I don't need to select folders, but I can select a folder if necessary. So in running the query, I run query. I suggest that you run and save results just so you don't lose what you've done. I can also simplify my analysis by, if I don't have the node commitment already, I can create the result as a new node. So it would add commitment to my nodes list over here on the left. Or if I'd already had commitment as a node, I can merge the results done by this search with other things coded as commitment that I already have. Because it's a new node and I haven't coded anything commitment previously, I'm going to select new node. Location in results, that's fine, and we go OK. The name cannot be empty. Okay, the name is commitment, and I can put in a description of what is it that I mean by commitment. Or what I strongly suggest you do is how you made this node. So this was a text query plus commitment. So if you have a lot of similar types of searches, or if you do a word count search, you know that you can call it a WC query, or those sorts of specifying how it was done, so therefore you can rerun it if necessary. So here we have all of the results for commitment and the nature of commitment in Facebook. So I can find out that this reference to commitment is actually in the reference list, so that's no good to me. So I can uncode there is a way of uncoding, but it seems not in this section. I'd have to open it up in the nodes. So then I can look at this one. So here we have an example is Austin, who included the focus on pursuing and disseminating knowledge, the recognition of the importance of academic freedom, the commitment to intellectual honesty, and the value given to collegiality and the commitment to service to society. So this is someone's definition of, it's down here somewhere. So I can find out in what context this reference to commitment happens and develop up a bigger understanding of how commitment is referred to and how it is defined in the literature. So this is the coding process and the query process that you have within Nvivo. So we can have good and bad. There is also a bunch of exploration things that are available, so you can build mind maps. So when we talk about conceptual framing, you can build a mind map where you can import codes into that mind map and play around with how you think those different codes belong together. So that's a fun way if you're a more visual kind of person. There is also the ability in Nvivo to do word maps, those where the most commonly used words appear together in one of those clouds. So here we go, word cloud. So in terms of everything I have put into Nvivo, we see that the most commonly used word is creation. The problem with the word cloud in Nvivo is that often you can't exclude words. So if you put in interview transcripts and your transcripts say question answer, then question and answer get counted as words in the word cloud. So what we are aiming to do in terms of doing this process is to explore what is in the literature, give them names, then run a query so you can explore how often something is said and whether it actually seems to be important across all the literature, and then start to build a conceptual map in your head of what concepts and ideas should be included, what should not be included, and how do those concepts relate together. So this is a very quick run through of some of the things you can do in Nvivo in terms of analyzing the data.